Okay, picking back up then, I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look at a couple of those requirements that we talked about at the very beginning. So remember the 4 requirements to have a valid contract: agreement of the parties, consideration, the parties are legally competent, and it's a legal contract for a legal purpose. So those first 2 are the ones I really want to highlight. First off is the agreement. So the agreement between the parties. I make an offer, you accept it, so we have an agreement. So when we're talking about that, on page number 2, agreement is a mutual understanding or a meeting of the minds between 2 or more persons to the essential terms of a contract. All right, so you've got a mutual understanding between the person who made the offer, the person accepting it. A mutual understanding or a meeting of the minds, that's sometimes what it's called under the law, between 2 or more people to the essential terms of the contract. So point A, the offer. So when we say offerer, offeree, it kind of gets confusing. Offerer is the person who makes the offer. Offeree is the person who it's made to. Okay, so an offer, point A. The offerer's promise or commitment to either perform or refrain from performing some type of future act. So it's their promise. The offer is the promise or the commitment to either do something or to not do something. All right, there's 3 elements of an offer. All right, number 1, the offerer must seriously and objectively intend to perform. All right, they have to seriously and objectively intend to perform. Example, my car's been giving me a lot of trouble. Not me, not really, not a lot of trouble. I'm dramatic and it's just annoying. But if I'm mad at my car and somebody walks past me and I'm like, I will sell you this car for $5, and they say, I accept. Well, okay, no, I'm not really going to sell you my car for $5 no matter how mad I am at it. So I'm not serious, okay? So the offer has to be serious and objective. So objective means we're looking at what would a reasonable person think when I said, I'll sell you my car for $5. Was I being serious? And under this objective standard, would a reasonable person have thought that I would really sell my car for $5? No. All right, so the offer has to be serious, and under a reasonable person standard, would somebody have thought I was really making an offer? Number 2, the terms of the offer must be reasonably certain. Remember, always pick what's reasonable under the law. The terms must be reasonably certain or definite. Okay, so again, when I say I'll sell it to you for $5, not only was I not being serious, but the terms were in no way definite or certain. So when we talk about a real estate contract, I offer to sell you or buy your house for $100,000. I will buy it by the end of this month. I will give you this, I will give you that, I will give you this. You know, the terms of the contract are certain or definite. That's what makes an offer really an offer. And number 3, the offer has to be communicated to the offer. Let me do it the way your book says. Offerer or its agent, realtor, whatever, must communicate the offer to the offeree. Obviously, that offer has to be communicated to the person you're making it to for it to be a valid offer. Okay, so you've got a serious offer with reasonably definite or definite terms, and it's communicated to the person that you're making the offer to. Now, remember, for you to have an agreement, the offer, and it has to be accepted. That's what makes the agreement. So point B there is acceptance. Acceptance. This is a voluntary act by the offeree indicating their agreement of the offer's terms. Okay, so you've got acceptance is the voluntary act of the person who's the offer has been made to, indicating their agreement of those terms. So I want to circle back real quick to the offer, to something else that happens too. A lot of times opinions have to be differentiated from an offer. Okay, so think about when you go to the doctor. Well, I think what I can do is, this is your prognosis, and I think that if you take this step, take these medications, then all of this will go away. That's not an offer that you can say, well, this didn't happen and we had a contract and you've breached it because I didn't get better when I took all of those pills and did those steps. That's an opinion. That's not an offer to enter into any type of an agreement. So just wanted to circle back on that. Make sure you can differentiate somebody's opinion versus an offer for services or an offer to do something. Okay, so going back to the acceptance, point B. So, voluntary act by the offeree that they agree to the terms. So, point little one under there. Say they don't want to accept it. Say they don't like the terms. Then conversely, the offeree can reject the offer. In which case, the offer terminates when that person receives notice of the rejection. Okay, let me finish that sentence and then I'll unpack that. Any subsequent attempts by the offeree to accept will be construed as a new offer. All right, so think about this with a real estate contract. I offer to buy your house for $100,000. If you accept it, great, we have an agreement. No, if you don't, because you think your house is worth $150,000, you reject it. We do not have an agreement. My offer has been rejected and my offer is now terminated. But say you come back at me and say, but I'll sell it to you for $150,000. Now you've made the offer to sell your house for $150,000, at which point I can either accept it and we have an agreement, or I can reject it and your offer has been terminated. Okay, so you'll see how, as the parties, we can switch back and forth as to who's making the offer and to who they're making it to. So that's point one there. Number two, mirror image rule. Mirror image rule. An offeree's acceptance must match the offer exactly. Otherwise, it's a counteroffer. Okay, so under the mirror image rule, the acceptance must match the offer exactly. Otherwise, it's a counteroffer. So I offer to buy your house for $100,000. You reject it, and you come back and say, I'll sell it to you for $100,000, but you have to pay cash. You have to close on it and buy and give me that cash within 5 days. You have new terms that I didn't propose in my offer. So under the mirror image rule, those don't match exactly. And now it's a counteroffer that I can either accept and we have an agreement, or I can reject and that terminates. Okay, so just think about it. If it doesn't match perfectly, then we're talking about a whole new offer being made that can either be accepted or rejected. And point three there, generally, silence cannot constitute acceptance. All right, so I'm going to need some type of acceptance from you, not just, well, I never heard from them, so I guess we're good. No. Unless that's custom in whatever situation you're in, unless you and that person have worked together for 40 years and that's how you've always done it, generally speaking, silence isn't going to be enough to constitute an acceptance. We're going to need something formal saying, we accept your offer, here's our signature, we're in agreement, we're under contract. And point four, I've got bugs. The mailbox rule. Mailbox rule. So the acceptance takes effect, and you're under an agreement, at the time the offeree sends or delivers the acceptance. All right? So I offer to buy your house for $100,000. At the time that they send or deliver their acceptance to me, then it takes effect and we're in agreement. All right, so the timing can become an issue if they've sent it but I haven't yet received it, and say I go make an offer to another person. I offer to buy your house. Well, no. You offered to buy that one and they've accepted it even though you haven't received the acceptance yet. You're under contract on that one. Now, keep in mind, a lot of contracts will say, in the event you need to notify the other party, this is how you have to do it. And that's for purposes of such, as the mailbox rule. That if you send something, say we've said we will always communicate via email, or say we've said we will always use these mailbox addresses for snail mail, then as long as you communicate in the way you guys have agreed upon, once you deliver or send that acceptance, you're under contract, all right? There's no going back. So that's the mailbox rule. All right, so enough about agreement. Offer and acceptance, those make the agreement. That's the first requirement of a contract. Lastly is consideration. All right, so remember, when we talk about a real estate contract, I'll give you $100,000 for your house. Well, the $100,000 in exchange for your house, that's the consideration. So what that means, consideration, let's define it. Value given in return for a promise or performance in a contractual agreement. So it's the value given in return for a promise or performance in a contractual agreement. What's the value? What are you each giving up? That's the consideration. So consideration must be, number one, legally sufficient, must be legally sufficient and bargained for by the party that's receiving it. All right, legally sufficient. Of course, $100,000 is going to be legally sufficient. And it's bargained for. I'm giving you something in exchange for you giving up something. It's not just a one-way street. All right, it's legally sufficient and it's bargained for by the person who's going to receive it. All right? Now, a couple of things I want you to know about consideration. The courts aren't going to question the adequacy of it. Basically, the courts don't care if you got a bad deal. If you only paid $100,000 for it, they're not going to question whether $100,000 was the right price or not. They don't care if it was $1. They just want to make sure that there was something given up in exchange for something else. Okay, that each party gave something of value to the other. And so they're not going to question whether you got a good deal or not. So it doesn't matter if it was $100,000 or if it was $1. It just has to be legally sufficient. Court doesn't care if it was adequate. And this is really what distinguishes a contract from a gift. When you gift something to somebody, they're not bargaining for and giving up something in exchange for that. You're just gifting them something. So that's really what distinguishes a going under contract on something for just giving somebody a gift. Okay? And deeds say this. When you sell your house, the deed will say, for and in consideration of $100,000, the receipt of which has been acknowledged by the other person. So, your deeds actually state what the consideration is. And again, it can be $1. It can be $100,000. It can be $1 million. Courts don't care what it is. They just want to make sure that it's there. All right? So that's the introduction to contracts. Aren't they enlightening? They may not be the most exciting thing, but they're important because you're going to face them every day of your life. Well, maybe not every day, but a lot. So the next chapter, we'll get into more of contract performance and then what happens when you don't do what you're supposed to do under the contract. So I'll see you guys in class for any questions. Have a good weekend.